Hi folks, welcome back to my channel. So today's topic is pretty interesting and it is a very common question that I am asked in my day-to-day life, especially from the folks who are just starting their career or um, have like very less experience in this trade, just started their career. So often people say they are able to understand each and everything in software engineering and they are doing good as well, but one thing they are missing is they often miss deadlines, right? And how do they meet deadlines? And this is a very, and this is not a single instance. So they say like they often miss the deadlines, right? So today we will discuss a little bit in depth about how to give proper estimates to the task and what to do if you see you are missing deadlines and things are going south, right? And how to work in a way that you meet deadlines, right? So we will discuss all these topics in a very short video, sort of. So first thing in this topic that we will cover, I'll write down all the topics. So um, like what are the major concerns that we face, and these are like mostly thoughts, so that these thoughts would be you must have encountered some of thoughts, but you are not alone. Everybody has similar thoughts. So first we'll discuss about what are the major concerns and all that stuff, uh, right? Then how to give task estimates. Okay. And then like how to add buffers, right? So today we will cover all these topics, right? So first of all, major concern, right? As I mentioned, like often people say, okay, I'm good at engineering, but I'm unable to meet deadlines. The another concern that I often receive from the folks is, okay, I'm confused. Like, okay, this is a task, and I have 2 days to do this task. Now I have two ways. Either I go by the fastest route. I search few things over Stack Overflow, find a solution from here and there, right? Ask for help, and or another way is like I properly set read documentation, and in that way I might miss a deadline, but that is, in my opinion, is the correct way to do things, right? So people aren't able to decide what should they do in which situation, right? So basically, people often have a lot of questions on taking long route versus taking the shortcuts. And sometimes people are taking shortcuts when in the pressure situations and like unknowingly as well, which they don't realize early on. So, and taking shortcuts is a habit when you are point to proof, right? Basically, what I mean by point to proof is like, let's say your job is at stake, right? You are intern and your performance will be evaluated basis on your capability to deliver on time and so and all that stuff, right? Basically, when things are at stake, right? So people have tendency to take shortcuts, at the same time they ask these questions. Okay, so I am in this situation, I have tasks which are having sharp deadlines, and like I need to complete this task fast, so what should I do? And if I don't deliver on time, maybe I will not get converted, or things like that, right? Then there are other stuff like uh, how do I time box things so that I meet deadlines, right? So sometimes people say that, okay, what I do is I try to time box things, but at the end of the day, I end up completing nothing, right? So let's say if I have three things to do, I try to time box these things to 3 hours thing, but I'm not able to complete anything within that time box, and so it is like creating demotivating experience. They can. So these are the like major concerns I get from deadline. Apart from these, I also get questions around what will happen if I miss deadlines, right? So lot of folks have fear of missing deadlines. So um, now this is sort of a disclaimer, right? I'm not going to talk about the situations where your leadership have problems clearly, because in that situation, even if you do good or bad, things are not going to work, right? But for the sake of this video, I'm assuming the leadership is pretty good, and people are you are the environment in the company is decent enough, and you feel that there is something in you that needs improvement, right? um, so if you think that you are doing everything good and there is problem in the management, maybe this is not the right video for you. But if you feel that, okay, everybody in the team is doing pretty good, and there is something that needs improvement in yourself, in these areas especially, then maybe this is the video for you, right? So now the first thing is, uh, so meeting deadline is a very lagging metric, right? When I say a lagging metric is, it's an end goal, right? So you have been assigned a task by your manager or by your TL, and now you need to estimate that task. That is your input. So if the input is right, the output is more likely to be right. Otherwise, if your input is wrong, the odds of meeting the required output or desired output are are very very low, right? That is simple maths, right? So first task that you should be doing is how to give proper estimates, right? Now here people have a lot of doubts, right? How do I estimate tasks? And even so, one thing is, there is a issue like I am not able to estimate tasks properly. Second is, I think task is going to take take X amount of time, but it seems unreasonable. It it feels difficult to explain, right? So basically your gut feeling is saying that task is going to take longer, but you are not able to explain it, right? So these are generally two pitfalls. One pitfall is when you are not able to estimate the task properly, right? And how hard you try every time you give less timelines, and you end up like falling short of deadlines. The another thing is you initially felt like, okay, the task will take 5 days, but now you are not able to explain to the manager or your immediate lead that why is it going to take 5 days, right? Cool. So in the first case, like the framework for both is very simple, and I'm going to give you a very simple framework, right? So these are the problem statements. So the first thing that I suggest to folks who are struggling, or anyone who is estimating any engineering task, is always give deadline with confidence percentage, right? So what I mean by confidence percentage is, so when you are saying like, okay, this task is going to take 3 days, right? This is a very hard commitment. That means you are 100% sure that it is going to take 3 days. Now, what would have been better is you say with a certain confidence, okay, how about this? With 60% confidence, this task should take 3 days, right? Why I'm saying 60% confidence? Because the PRT has these open-ended questions that needs answering, right? These are the unknowns that I need exploring, right? So in the best case scenario, this task will take up to 3 days, but in the worst case scenario, this task may take up to 5 days, right? So, so if you do this, right, first it will help you build more clarity with your lead, right? Why you are saying this task is going to take 5 days. So if now over here, right, when you in the problem statement too, when you had a gut feeling that this task is going to take 5 days, but it is difficult to explain because you were at that time you were planning for the worst case scenario, right? But that doesn't mean that everything will fall apart and you will end up taking 5 days. But that may also happen, right? So, but in the best case, it is going to 3 days, right? That's why it was difficult to explain. So, in that case, what you can do is always give a timeline for the best case and worst case, right? Rather, give a confidence percentage along with. I am 70% confident that I should be pull this task in 4 days. Now, with that confidence percentage, you are keeping a room for spillover, right? And if your manager needs um, that, okay, there is a strong commitment to be given to the product team or any other stakeholders, then they will say, okay, what will it take you to say with the 90% confidence, right? Then you have two things, right? Either you do a worst case scenario, okay, I need to explore these things, right? And with 90% confidence, I can say that this task will be done in the 5 days or 6 days. Okay. So first thing is always give deadlines with confidence percentage. The second thing is account for variables. So basically, accounting for variables is very, very important. Like while giving deadline. So what are the variables, right? And this is the what I have seen. Accounting, not accounting for variables, is the primary factor of you missing deadlines. So what are the variables? If you are a initial level software engineer, the first variable is unknowns, right? You didn't know know something that was required out of the task. You had a very simple idea of the system, but system was not that simple. That is a unknown for you, right? You had a very simple idea of scale, but when you go back and check, right, uh, the scale was much bigger than you had initially anticipated. So you need to account for these variables, right? And how can you account unknowns, which are initially unknowns? So this is where you learn from the experience, right? How many unknowns you have generally encountered, right? In your previous tasks of the same size, of the same complexity, on a journal basis, or how many unknowns you get. If generally you encounter very less unknowns, then you are fine. You don't need to account for the unknowns. But if on a average case you get up to 1 to 2 unknowns, then you see how much time you generally take to resolve those unknowns and account for those unknowns, right? Then communication. See, try to assess how much communication will the current task need with the product team or other stakeholders. Is it a very clear task that is a very straightforward implementation to do, or this task is going to take a lot of discussion with product team, right? A lot of discussion with the front end team. So if a task is bound to take a lot of discussions, then expect a delay, because communication can change the course of action. Communication can change the end result, right? So if you have a very close bound PRD, okay, it is very, very clearly defined that you need to do this and you need a very less communication, then it's fine. But if it is a loose-ended PRD, what I mean by loose-ended PRD is, okay, this is something that needs to be figured out with the design team, this is something that needs to be figured out with the DS team, this is something that needs to be figured out with the front-end team, this is something that needs to be figured out with the back-end team. Beat anyone. Let's say if you are working in front-end team, then something needs to be figured out with the back-end team. If you are a front-end team, in front-end team, something needs to be figured out with the design team. And you need to see how much communication does it take. So it will take you communication first while explaining the requirements to the another team, then getting the delivery of the required product from that team. So here comes the third thing is dependency resolution, right? How much time will it take in this task to resolve the required dependencies, right? So account for variables, as many variables as you can. This is the second aspect around how to give task estimations, right? Third thing is a third variable over here can be I missed other things like scale considerations, right? Etc. etc. Now, how would you account for variables and when will you account for variables? Okay, so the third idea is never, never is a very hard term. I would like to say is try to give deadlines after proper exploration, right? Don't try to give deadlines then and there. And in most of the organizations, generally it is fine to not give deadlines then and there. If you are assigned a task, try to give an ETA of an ETA. What ETA of an ETA means is, let's say your manager comes and say, okay, okay, Ram, this is the task, and you please tell me by when you will be able to complete this task. You go through the PRT and you tell him, okay, I think this will take 3 days. And your manager says, okay, I will meet you after 3 days. Uh, right. So instead of doing that, so ask your manager, okay, let me go back, right? Let me analyze this document. Let me analyze this PRT, and how about I will get back to you with the timelines by midday or maybe towards the end of the day. Right? So this is called giving an ETA, open ETA, right? You are giving that, you are saying that I will give you that deadline by end of the day, right? And you will utilize this time to properly explore the task. When I say properly explore the task is you will account for, you will build a raw solution in your mind. Okay, what can be the like easiest thing you can do to solve this task? In the worst case scenario, what can you do to resolve this problem? Or what can be done to resolve this PRT? Right? And that is for the worst case scenario. So it will give you the timeline for the worst case scenario, right? Now for the best case scenario, right, you need a high level design. So in a HLD, you will have a proper approach of solving that problem, right? It is not a LLD, which is a low level design, where you will have a proper class diagrams, etc., etc. It is basically an approach that you will take to solve that particular problem, right? So if you give deadlines over an HLD, then mostly in most of the cases you have accounted for all these variables. Basically, if you have approach, you will know what can be the unknowns, what are the unknown systems that you need to explore, right? Basically, if you have HLD and earlier you were not aware that this task will take notifications, this task will need you to integrate notifications as well. Now that is the unknown that you have discovered and make it known. Now it is a, from early on it was unknown. Now it is a unknown known, right? You know that you will need to solve for notifications. Still you don't know how notification system work, but at least you know what you need to explore, right? And how much time it is going to take you to explore that system. So basically, if you have less time, right? You can have a raw solution in your mind, right, and give for the worst case scenario. So when you are planning for the worst case scenario, or with the raw solution, you can say with the 50-60% confidence, right? I am pretty sure with the 50-60% confidence, I will be able to do this task in 3 to 4 days, right? With the HLD, you will be able to say with the 90% confidence, I'm sure I will be able to do this task in 3 days, right? So that is how you can account for variables and like give a better deadlines. Okay. Now coming back to HLD, generally what I suggest folks is create a template to build HLDs. What I mean by templates. So generally what I feel folks miss is sometimes during the HLD phase, because in the HLD phase you have very less time, right? So generally sometimes they miss scale considerations, sometimes they miss, let's say, indexes on the DB, queries start to break, sometimes they miss design considerations, right? Sometimes they miss, uh, let's say, data migrations in especially in case of backend engineering. In the front end engineering, what I have seen folks missing is, let's say, they had to like basically how would they roll out this particular feature. Browser compatibility, I have seen folks missing often, right? They sometimes include some features that are not supported by certain browsers, right? Sometimes folks miss tracking, right? They forgot to add proper logs, etc., right? So when I'm saying HLD, have a template. For example, you are a backend engineer, right? Have a template. What will it take? Um, or maybe a list of things that you often miss. Generally, what I do is I have a template for backend tasks. I have a template for front end tasks, and I try to follow that template. So what that template says is, okay, what are the API changes that needs to be done for this task? What are the scale considerations? What are the DB considerations? When I say DB considerations, I write like, okay, I need these. Are there any new indexes needed if I'm creating a new table? So what that does is that gives me another chance to think if I'm missing out on a particular topic, right? So sometimes what happens is while I'm designing a solution, I sometimes miss DB considerations, right? But with the template, I will consider each and every factor, right? So that is how you can be efficient at writing good HLDs, right? So yeah, um, and the fourth task is, so now you have an HLD, you have accounted for variables, and now you have a certain percentage, confidence percentage to your estimations. But still, if you want to be very sure, and you have a certain amount like 80-85% surety, now you want to be extra sure, the next step that you can do is break the task in smaller tasks, right? And try to estimate each task, right? So if you now you have HLD, if you break a bigger PRT into smaller tasks and try to estimate each task, your estimations on the each task will be more precise than your estimation on the larger task, right? So this will again, so and when I say smaller task, each task should be such that it can be deployed or it can be made live as an independent unit, right? It should not be like, okay, I will design a table, right? So this is not a task. The task can be create a table and migrate all the previous data to this table. Now, this is an independently deployable unit, right? That you have deployed a table and migrated all the data, right? This is an independent task. This doesn't require anything, right? Then the another task can be write an API and the business logic, right? Now, for a task you have created these two, or you can break a bigger task by business logic. Okay, if you have a bigger feature, you can divide the feature into smaller features and ship each feature one by one, right? That is another way of breaking a bigger task into smaller tasks. For example, if you are, let's say, designing for uh, salary, right? You are building in some ERP tool and you are designing a salary module, right? So the first feature you can deliver is that a calculator to calculate the salary of the employees, right? So what it will do, it will reduce the manual work, as you will be able to automate the calculation of the salary. Now then, the second thing is, once you have shipped the calculator, the second thing is, if your calculator is working fine, then you can release a dispersal module which can automatically disperse the salary to employees as well, right? Now if your calculator and your dispersal modules are stable, then you can also, then the third thing that you can build is approval flow on top of that, right? Which will I would say give your admin teams access to approve or disapprove some salary dispersals, right? So you can like break a bigger product feature into smaller features and try to estimate for each feature, right? So that is a few things that you can do. Now there are some cautions. What can be the cautions here? So first caution is, what I've seen folks giving deadlines for development cycle only. Like, okay, this feature will take me X days to build, right? But what you should give is, or give timeline for release, right? So when I say timelines for release, by the time task is not completely tested by QA and is live on production, your task is not over. If you are not accounting for time spent in the code review, time spent in the QA, time spent in the AT of the task, AT means acceptance testing of the task, or by the time your task is not live on production and is not stable to live users, your task is not over, right? So always give timelines for the final release, right? There are another questions as well, right? Sometimes to meet deadlines, right? I have seen people losing their integrity. So when I say losing their integrity is, right, they try to give very worst case, I would say, let's say adding unnecessary buffers, or they try to give a deadline which they are very sure of meeting, right? Basically, if they feel that task will take 3 days, they will say, okay, I will take 6 days, but and in those 6 days I will definitely meet this task, right? So always try to be aggressive, right? Basically, it will help you grow, right? And don't lose your integrity. Always have your integrity. So integrity have a lot of meanings. So sometimes people start taking shortcuts. They try to ask help from their seniors. Like if things start to go south, they are not able to solve things, just immediately start to ask, right? So don't do such thing, right? So coming to that, let me cover this topic first. What to do if things go south, right? So what can you do if things go south? So first of all, always take the right, even if the things are going south, okay, you are you should always choose the right path. What the right path means, don't try to take shortcuts, don't try to compromise on the quality of the software, right? Ship with the best quality, do proper testing. Deadlines are just to keep you on your toes and are not tools to punish folks, right? So even if things are going south, you should take the right path. Eventually, if you take the right path, you may miss deadlines of one or two tasks, but taking the right path will set you up for success. Now, if you are properly debugging an issue, right, you are going through the issues of that particular repo, you are reading documentation, you are properly analyzing the stack trace, right, and you are trying to go to the root of the issue, right? First, you will understand the system, right? It will help you estimate your next task in a much better way than you otherwise would have. Second, it will increase your domain knowledge, right? You will be much better version of yourself 2 days later. On the contrary, if you simply faced an issue, you looked at the issue, you simply debug few things, and if not, you ask someone and someone solved it for you, you learn nothing out of it. You will have the same problems again and again, right? So always take the right path. Deadline are just to keep you on your toes and not to finish books. But you can do is, if you find things going south, communicate early. If you have said, like, okay, this task is going to take 3 days, after 1.5 day of effort, you felt that, okay, this task is going to take probably 4 or 5 days, you communicate it to your manager. Okay, so it is very easy for your managers to course correct or provide you help if required, or basically it is a much better situation to be in if you communicate early. Rather, if your manager find on the third day that the task is going to take another 2 days, it is a very difficult situation for both of you. So if you find things going south, communicate early on, right? Cool. So now coming to this thing, why and how to add buffers. I think buffers are still important. Why buffers are still important is, even if you have created HLD, you have properly estimated your task, but you still have, sometimes you still have unknowns. Basically those unknowns are dependency resolution on other teams, right? Some sort of a dependency resolution, some sort of unknowns that are still unknowns, even if you have created HLD, that you will come to know at the time of LLD, or maybe at the time of ET, right? Acceptance testing, or some course correction that needs to be done, right? So up to 10% of buffer is generally helpful. Like if you are saying that, okay, this task is going to take 3 days, and if you add 10% of buffer, and so when before adding buffer, see if there are unknowns, right? But 10 generally 10% of buffer, like from 3 days to 3.5 days, maybe like I hate saying like, okay, 3 days, 2 hours, etc. But up to 10% of buffer generally helpful, right? And that 10% can vary. Sometimes you need 10, 20%. Let's say if you are estimating for small tasks, right? If you are estimating for large tasks, the buffer percentage, let's say if you are estimating 1 week task, right? Then generally 1 day of buffer is helpful after a proper design, HLD, for some unknowns, some communication delays, right? Some code level changes that you had early not anticipated, some extra test cases that need fixing, right? uh, some CSS, some browser compatibility that you had to work on, which you didn't anticipate, right? So generally a 10% of buffer is helpful. If you add more than 20 to 30% of buffer, then you are not being aggressive. Then you are playing very, very safe, and it is going to hinder your performance in a long run. So this is generally the framework that has worked for me over the years, right? Now, there is one question that is still left unanswered. How do I time box things, right? And so that I meet deadlines. And if I time box things and I'm not able to complete those things in time, right? Uh, it is creating a demotivating experience. So you have created an HLD, you have given a deadline, you have done, like you have broken everything into smaller tasks. Now you are trying to time box the tasks. Okay, these are the 3 tasks that I need to complete, and I assign 4 hours for this task, 5 hours for this task, 6 hours for this task. And if your first task is going to take more than 4 hours, right? Then it creates negative feedback, I would say, right? Because while coding, it may take you more than 4 hours, because you don't work at the same speed all the time, right? You get some ad hocs, right? uh, you got a peer asking for help, and you were not able to complete that task in 4 hours, right? So, and maybe while doing the task you had to read documentation, right? And documentation of maybe some library, and it took you more than expected. Let's say it took you 1 hour of exploration. You had earlier you had expected only half an hour of exploration. It took you 2 hours of exploration. Such things may happen. And when I say always take the right path, I literally say always take the right path. And also, when I say right path is always with the trade-offs. I'm not volunteering for uh, ignoring the trade-offs. Right? Sometimes um, I would have to say, okay, this is a topic that I want to read, but for the current task, only this information is relevant, but I want to read the whole topic. Then what I'll do is, I will use that information, complete my task, add that topic to my reading list, and read it later. I'm not saying don't optimize. When I'm say take the right path, I say don't take shortcuts, right? Don't ask for help without doing any work, right? Don't ask for help without doing proper exploration, right? Uh, don't write code that you don't understand, right? Basically, simply just you type the problem over Stack Overflow, you find some developer's code that has written some reject and that has some regex. You don't understand that regex at all. You simply copy pasted it and made it work. Don't do those things. So now how to time box? Generally, what has worked for me is I try to have a daily checklist. Basically, at the start of the day, I just try to commit that okay, today I will do these 5 tasks. Now, out out of these 5 tasks, no task is time bound, right? But end of the day, I'll try to complete these 5 tasks by end of the day, right? Generally, I plan my day for 8 hours. Now, if let's say all the tasks took extra time, I may need to stretch my day by 2 hours. Now, maybe instead of 8 hours, I may end up working for 10 hours. But generally, that don't happen. Generally, what happens is one task will take me half an more, other task will take half hour less, right? But at the end of the day, I am able to do 5 tasks. So that is what has worked for me. But now this is particularly a gray area, and like at a very micro task level, how do you estimate things? So this is up to your jurisdiction, but that is having a daily task list, having a daily checklist has worked for me. So just sharing it with you folks, right? So yeah, this is what I think of how to estimate tasks and give them timelines properly, and what are the common pitfalls, what are the frameworks that people take, right? And what has, and especially what things I'm just sharing things that has worked for me personally in my career. I hope these things help you as well, and yeah. Let me know in comments if you have any comments, doubts, or you differ over some points. So let's see.